Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Turn Support Signals into a Force for Customer Renewal and Expansion, brought to you by TSIA and sponsored by SupportLogic. My name is Erin Horowitz, and I'll be your moderator for today. Before we get started, I'd like to go over just a few housekeeping items. Today's webinar will be recorded. A link to the recording of today's presentation will be sent to you via email. Audio will be delivered via streaming. All attendees will be in a listen-only mode. Your webinar controls, including volume, are found in the toolbar at the bottom of the webinar player. We encourage your comments and questions. If you think of a question for the presenters at any point, please submit through the Ask a Question box on the top left corner of the webinar player. We will be opening it up for a verbal Q&A at the end of the presentation. Lastly, feel free to enlarge the slides to full screen at any time by selecting one of the full screen button options, which are located on the top right corner of the slide player. I'd now like to introduce our presenters, John Ragsdale, Distinguished Researcher and Vice President of Technology Ecosystems at TSIA, Judith Platts, Chief Customer Officer at SupportLogic, and Jerry Stalick, Senior Vice President at Delinea. As with all of our TSIA webinars, we do have a lot of exciting content to cover in the next 45 minutes. So let's jump right in and get started. John, over to you.
Well, thank you, Erin. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We're going to be talking today about taking that support data you're already collecting and identifying signals that can help with customer renewal and expansion opportunities for your customer success team, for the sales team. And I am thrilled to be joined by two amazing co-presenters today. I think you all know Judy Platts. She is the Chief Customer Officer for SupportLogic, and she's formerly the Vice President of Research for Support and Customer Success at TSIA. So always great to have Judy back. And Jerry Stalick is the Senior Vice President at Delinea, and I know Jerry from his many years at F5, where he was Vice President of Customer Experience. So Jerry, great to have you back as well.
Thanks, John.
So let's dive in. I'm sure you're all familiar with TSIA's layer model, land, adopt, expand, renew. And I think we historically have thought about support mainly participating in the first two. Getting those support contracts created as part of the original selling of your technology. There's a lot of customer references involved in the supportability of the products through that sales process. And of course, the adopt phase. I mean, the majority of questions coming into support today are not questions about bugs or hard down systems, they're how do I questions. So we all know that support is really the unofficial onboarding group within most technology companies. But we're going to be exploring today that the role that support can play in both expand and renew. And expansion opportunities, remember, it's not always just about technology, it's also about additional services. And renewal, there are so many signals going on in those support conversations that can give you a clue if this customer is really happy and they're likely to renew, or if they're running into some friction points that may be an issue when that renewal comes due. And TSIA came up with this concept of data-driven selling quite a few years ago. And it's not about support people becoming salespeople. It's about mining the support conversations for indicators that there is an opportunity there or that there is a problem there. And the leader in mining support information for these signals is SupportLogic. So thrilled to have them as our sponsor today. So I usually in these webinars show some data around planned spending for classic support technologies like knowledge management and search and support automation and AI. But I wanted to show today that there is a lot of planned spending around renewal and expand selling automation or artificial intelligence. And this is from the 2024 tech surveys I recently completed. We surveyed 200 CIOs about where they are planning to spend money in the next 1 to 2 years. So I know all of you are probably heads down in your budget cycle for 2025, and support typically doesn't get the budget. They're always hoping for a little bit more. And I'm showing this because there is budget out there for technology to help identify, to help automate all of the renewal and expand selling opportunities. So if you listen to what we're talking about today and see this opportunity, I think there's a possibility you can tap into some of this additional budget that may not be classically earmarked for support. So Judy, we've been talking about upsell, cross-sell, and support for years. And what we've always been told is support doesn't want to get their hands dirty doing the actual selling. But it seems that mining these support interactions for upsell opportunities is a great way for support to get some visibility and respect within the organization as really a lead source for upsell. And I think a common theme with the webinars that I have done with you and SupportLogic is about uncovering the strategic impact of support. So do you see this as an opportunity for support organizations?
Absolutely, John. Thank you for the question. Without a doubt, this is, if not one of the largest, it is the largest opportunities for support. To be able for a support team to literally tie themselves, and I'd say not only to the adoption and expansion and the renewal of the customers, but also potentially, John, to the landing of customers if organizations do POCs or POVs or whatever the acronym of the day is. If your customers are prospects and they have the opportunity to try before they buy, support is sitting right there in an amazing seat, an amazing chair, so they can actually help with the land piece of this as well. Because those support cases, if they come in even before the prospect converts to customer, there's data. There's data about how the POC is going. You can put more people into the engagement if that's what's necessary. So for me, and we've talked about this so much over the years, tie yourself to the revenue. Because I think a lot of people struggle with the conversation still of turning their support center into, let's say, a working profit center and, not being only a break even or, cost center. Tie yourself to that revenue and make yourself part of the larger team responsible for the landing and the expanding and the renewal. So please, if you're not doing it, think about it. One of the data points we have on this, John, when I was still at TSIA, I wrote a paper co-wrote with Steve Frost. For lead generation from sales, it was $7 per lead. Lead generation from other sources, it was $130 some per lead. So if support can actually help fill the pipeline, that's amazing. And doing it for that dollar amount, it's incredible.
And you're capturing contextual information about it as well. So it's not a blind call.
It's not, no. It's probably one of the most qualified leads that you can possibly have.
So what are some of the common missed opportunities that you're seeing in support interactions? Could you give some examples of opportunities your customers are now able to identify?
Absolutely, John. So first off, let's just talk about the customers of SupportLogic that are using SupportLogic in their organizations. We're so proud. We have some of the best companies investing, in our version of AI, and they're analyzing every one of their support interactions. And without going into too much, and here's some metrics on the screen around operational cost, customer experience, and retention. And you can see some of these brand logos. If you can reduce your customer churn by 25%, right? If you can improve some of those basic metrics, time to resolve, time to respond, improving your NPS scores, that's fantastic. But let me show you quickly what SupportLogic does. And this is a build out and a look at how SupportLogic is being used today by those customers that I showed you. We're looking at every word in the case all the time. And what we're identifying are those signals. And so traditional signals showing up there on the right, and tie those to the colors that you see there on the left. We're looking for the frustration, the impatience, things like the churn risk. Is the customer feeling anxious? Are they feeling beyond frustrated? Maybe they're getting into negative and telling you, quite frankly, that what you're saying or what you're doing in the casework is not helpful. So we're pulling all of that information together and presenting that, typically to the support engineer and support leadership. And what we've done, so these are our traditional 40 signals that we've looked for. So you can see every shade pretty much of the rainbow here, positive all the way to negative, and everything that's in between. So customers real time can take action. And that action may be, in a traditional sense, a manager steps in to do a proactive outreach. A manager may step in to reassign a case or to bring it into a swarm. The engineer, this helps them prioritize their work, again, based upon the color and the sentiment that we're finding. And it was through conversations when Jerry was still a prospect with SupportLogic, and actually put us through, one of those POV to POC type of, run through, right? Let me see my data. Let me see what I can do. And Jerry wanted to talk to us and was one of the main contributors to us adding the additional sentiments to our traditional 40, which are built around renewal and expansion. So tell me and help me find those signals that are coming in from the customer. And John, you said it in the beginning, things like not only additional product, but maybe there are additional services. Maybe there's education services that the customer might need. Maybe it is something as easy as a health check that they need to subscribe to and be given. But also then conversations around the renewal. Today's world, if you can pull a renewal in early, if you can pull a renewal in, for multi-year, based upon knowing the signals, having these signals shared with not only customer success teams, but the other service teams, the sales teams, the renewal teams who are doing all of this work. And really saying, hey, wait a minute. This is good stuff. And one of the things that we do, John, is we can set these signals up, they come out of the box, if you will, from SupportLogic. And so you can send the signals immediately to somebody else via our alerting system. So sales can be set up to receive any one of the things that you list here. And obviously everybody's data is different. But, if I were a salesperson and I received an alert saying that a customer wanted a demo, let's say, of a new product that we just put out, maybe they saw a press release that they're interested in, it lands right in my inbox or my Slack, wherever the alert is triggered to go. And right there's your qualified lead. And the good thing about it is sales didn't have to come to us on any kind of a regular cadence and ask for this data. They're receiving the alerts they want to receive. But more importantly, support didn't have to, go and have a meeting, go and send an email, right? A lot of those things, as we know, they get lost anyway. So this alerting system and looking for these signals is phenomenal for any organization. Then what you can do too is take these alerts, let's say on a regular basis. Is it weekly? How many are we sending? So that's up to the data and up to the number of customers. Take these alerts back and say, okay, let's talk about what happened with those. And now back to what we talked about in the beginning, you can tie yourself to, hey, we sent you, I'll make up a number, 40, right? Did any of those convert? What a great thing to add to your executive reviews, to add to your motivation for your support team, to add to the conversations with sales and CS that we all have on a daily basis, because you've just said, I sent you 40, and you're actually asking for a little bit of accountability back. Did you follow up on those? What happened with those? And then that goes back into continuing to tune our model. And our model can say, oh, some of those signals, you're not touching it right. You're not hitting the right string. Okay, let's tune that model and make sure we are picking up on the right message and sending those where they need to go. And I would say in certain organizations, the alerts, you can send them to who you want. You could send them to your chief revenue officer so that he or she sees the amount of input that's coming literally from these support cases.
Yeah, and I think it's got to be getting easier and easier because one of the big trends for the last 2 years is customer success and professional services creating these huge catalogs of value-added services like go in and build a custom dashboard or help with some business process issues. And those will exactly correlate to those conversations. So it's really easy to identify really what offer they should be extending to that customer. But
Absolutely.
I want to talk about an upsell opportunity that's near and dear to the heart of customer support executives, which is moving customers from standard support to premium support. So what are some signals that a customer may be ready for premium support or additional services?
Yeah, so great question, John. So just going to bounce back here for a moment, right? When we can see these signals coming in from customers, and again, a customer who is maybe, let's say, a lot of how-to questions and that's what SupportLogic does. It feeds up to you not only this case but all other cases that this customer has, so you can see the trend and the insights for this particular customer. And over here, when I ran through this particular slide and we populated with what comes up on the side here, you would see a health score for that customer, and you would be able to see what was happening holistically for the customer. So if I'm seeing things like too many how-to questions, or I'm seeing things, from a customer around the types of questions they're asking, that is a perfect opportunity. A lot of organizations, their standard level of support, first off, it's a smaller percentage. In some cases, it's free, right? Your first level is a free support, and then after that, you pay an additional percentage. You can either create custom offers, if you're doing a la carte, you can say, hey, these 3 things would be very useful for you and your team. You can feed back to your executive sponsor at the customer site. Hey, I've noticed that Joe really could use some advanced training in our product, right? Now you're touching education services, but you're also letting the executive know how his or her team is doing, in the adoption of your product. And you can take all of this and either fit it into the current offers that you have, or again, the a la carte offers. And again, in today's world, with everything that's going on with agents and the move to AI, the one thing that customers really want is that personalized service. So don't come to me and try to make me fit in your box of the offer. Come to me and tell me what you know about me and how that offer can be tailored to meet my needs. That's what customers really love in today's world.
So I said in my opening that traditionally support people don't want to get involved in sales. They see it as a conflict between supporting customers. So I think there have to be some mindset issues here. Are there shifts that are necessary to help support teams see the potential for upselling and creating automation that ultimately is being passed along to the success or the revenue team? I'm guessing there have to be some change management issues for some companies.
Without a doubt, John. And so, I say this a little tongue in cheek, but I think everybody that's listening, this will resonate. Support is triggered really on how many interactions will you have on a particular case, right? So really less calls, get it in, get it out. Sales is the exact opposite. They're triggered on lots of calls. We make lots and lots of calls, right? The more calls you make, the more successful you are. Support, the less calls you make, the more successful you are. So those two things right there are in conflict with each other. The metrics that we have in support, the things that we're looking at and measuring, we have to start there. We have to align those better with the other organizations. Because the truth of the matter is, if my support people can have conversations, and you can have a tool like SupportLogic, looking at the conversations that are there, whether it's a voice transcript of a call, whether it's a chat that we had, whether it's actual emails and case interactions that went back and forth. If we can monitor those and we can take that information up, we can rethink how we are working with these other teams and what that cultural shift looks like. But, for years and years and years, and John, you and I have done webcasts on this before, support measures so much. We are brilliant at all the metrics. And yet, I would tell you that most of the other organizations around us do not care about those metrics. And we don't have shared goals and shared metrics with each other at all. Support is usually there kind of saying, what did you sell the customer? How do you expect me to deliver that, right? Those old school questions. Change that whole thing and make that shift and move yourself up further into the sales cycle. And this is a brilliant way to do it. And, this is really, Jerry was with us at our SX Live conference. He was voted Transformational Leader of the Year because this, and I'm sorry, Jerry, I don't want to embarrass you, but you were, this is the thinking we need executives to have. Right? We need executives doing what Jerry did and saying, this is what I want to go after. Help me get there. Help me look for it. But I'd say we have to start with a mindset of shared goals and, really thinking about how each team is motivated and how can we play together more effectively.
So you've touched on this a bit already, but could you give some specific data points or signals that SupportLogic is looking for to surface these upsell opportunities? I think just some real world examples would help the audience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, for instance, I'm going to come back here for a minute. Let's take feature requests as a really good one, because I think that we all sit on a lot of feature requests in our support organization. We bring those in, we take those feature requests, and typically we'll log, a Jira or whatever our ticketing system is to send it over to our product team. And they may get attention. They may sit there for a while, right? We're focused on defects and we're focused on building futures. Sometimes features don't get the attention we want. Let's take that feature request. Let's look at those. Let's send those, let's say, to our professional services team. Our professional services teams can look at those and say, hey, I know exactly what I could do. You can go back to a customer and you could sell them a couple-hour engagement, a one-off type of thing, and you could build out what it is they're looking for. You can also take that information, feed that back immediately to the product team, and the product team can look at it and go, never knew a customer was asking for things like that, right? Because again, they're looking at what we always call, there's 10 here, 10% are defects, 10% are feature request. In the middle here is the great 80. That's where all the really cool information sits. Those are all the cases that product team doesn't see. Mm-hmm. If you can feed the product team that great 80 in a meaningful way, they can actually build other products. They can build add-ons to your product. You have more to sell. So that's one example. The other example is, again, we talked about the how-tos, but if I see a customer struggling, and you don't see that when you just look case by case, but if I'm getting an alert and it says, Betty, and I keep seeing Betty and I keep seeing her how-to questions, I can do one of two things. I can just keep answering Betty's questions through cases, or I can do an alert to my education team and say, hey, step in here. If you want to give it free, that's up to you. If you already have something pre-recorded that Betty could listen to, that's fine too. Or if you want to craft an offer that we can go back to Betty with, next month when we meet with her and say, hey, I have this for you. And again, what is that old line that people use? Selling isn't helping, but helping is selling, right? I think something like that, right? Help me be better at using your product. I know I'll buy more from you. I know I will, right? If you are helping me do better things in my business. And so any of these, right? If it comes to the usability issues and such, and, like I gave the example here, When you're seeing things like our license is expiring next month, can you send me a renewal quote? I'm sure a lot of organizations have things in place for early renewals, right? They have things in place for renewals that come in maybe early with low or no discounts, right? If a customer is sending you the signals, a lot of times what support would do currently is, maybe not even address that. That would be the worst thing. Or address it by saying, I'll let your AE know about it or your renewal rep. And then it just disappears. And the customer is forced to call back again or to try to find and get their person on the phone. And right now in the industry, with a lot of organizations doing a lot of, we'll call it tuning to their customer success teams, which also means reducing staff in those teams. Tuning's a better word, right? We're dropping a lot of things on the floor. And, in the customer's head, I've already asked you. And they're waiting for you to come back. And the organization might not have anything going on. They're not addressing that because it's sitting in a support case going unanswered.
You talked about how support and these other departments need to collaborate more and get some shared metrics and goals. How does integrating support data with customer success and product data give a more complete view for the upsell and cross-sell potential? Because as I said earlier, I think there's a great opportunity to add a lot more context to those opportunities.
Without a doubt, John. So if you're literally using the data and using it, again, nobody outside of support, and even support half the time or most of the time, doesn't want to read every single word of every single case. There's not enough time in the day for that at all. But if these alerts can be served up to the individuals that are responsible, customer success is going into, that dreaded QBR word or acronym that we use. An executive is going into a meeting with a customer, and you can serve up this information real time and say, hey, you were in one of your cases recently, let's say you were talking about a struggle that you had using our application. I'm not here to, sell to you, let's say, but we actually have an application that's tuned for you and you might want to look at it. Those conversations turn into the opportunities that you're really looking for. I don't want the generic salesperson coming to me during my QBRs, that I have with them. I want them knowing me so well. Because again, if you offer to me something that you saw that I need, I'm listening. It's not the generic things we all received in LinkedIn, the cold reach outs, right? You're targeting the exact thing I said I was struggling with or my team was struggling with. And I think it's just invaluable. And, for me, it's the whole reason I came to SupportLogic almost 2.5 years ago, because I saw what this could do at Salesforce where we were using it. So to me, this is just golden, golden, golden information you're sitting on.
Well, Jerry has been very patiently waiting. Do you want to take us through the Delinea case study?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Before I jump in, I do want to just mention that you, John, a minute ago, you had asked about mindset, right? And does this require a shift in mindset? I'd actually say the beauty of this is it does not require a mindset shift at the engineer level. The engineers keep doing what they're doing, what they've been doing for years and years and years, which is solving the technical problems and the how-to questions that are being presented to them. What it does require is a mind shift at the management and the executive level, because what we have is are tools now to get in and mine this data in a way that doesn't disrupt the support flow, which has been so important. And I think you mentioned it right at the very beginning. Support engineers, they're not really great at picking up on the signals that they might be getting from customers. And even if they are good at it, the processes just aren't in place for them to consistently bring those forward. This now, the automation, the AI, the large language models give us the ability to now act on these signals in ways that we never could have before. Okay, so that's kind of my big picture, my big picture view on this. But I want to jump into a couple of examples, if that's okay, of like we're doing this now and what we're seeing right now. Just a couple of sort of early examples around this. First was customer opened a support case, and they were asking about early termination and what happens to their data if they terminate early. Okay. So the support engineer does what support engineers do. They answered the questions around data retention and what happens there. But the signals team sees that here's this customer who's asking about early termination, right? That's a huge risk signal right there. So we grab that, we follow that up with the account team, we follow that up with the renewals team. I will tell you right now, the jury is still out. We don't know how this is all going to end up. But had this happened a year ago, I can guarantee you how it would have turned out, right? We would have answered their question about early termination. They would have terminated, and we'd have been like, oh, well, that's too bad. Too bad we didn't act on that signal that we saw 3 months before the renewal came up, right? Another one that's a little bit more kind of inside baseball is we had a question about licensing, and we have different licenses that are expiring at different times. And the customer's asking a question about, hey, this batch of licenses, can I get some temporary licenses so that my service doesn't get interrupted? And again, the support engineer does what the support engineer does, which is issue the temporary licenses. But because now we've got a question around licensing, we look at this and we're like, this is a mess. This customer is actually going to have a problem every single time any batch of licenses comes up for renewal. And we're going to have to, the renewals team is going to have to do work. The account team is going to have to do work. They may find some of their service interrupted because some batch didn't get renewed at the right time and something got overlooked. So now what we've done is we've engaged with that customer. We're doing a true up across all of their licenses. We're co-terming everything together. And we did get an upsell opportunity in that. It wasn't a huge upsell opportunity, but we've gotten an upsell opportunity. But more importantly, we've improved the overall customer experience. And again, from the support engineer perspective, they didn't do anything different. What we did was take that data and start using it in ways that made sense.
So, Jerry, I want to build on what you talked about there as you started. And thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing your story and your examples. And we know it's still early. You're thankfully, a new customer to us, but I feel like we've already, done a lot together. We talked about the fact that the support engineers don't necessarily have to change. They don't have to get their hands dirty, actually, right? It's all automated behind the scenes for them.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the evolution, though, of the managers and the leaders. And what does that evolution look like? How are they evolving in this new mindset? Because for us, it always was fix the problems faster, right? Can you talk a little bit about the evolution that you and your leaders are going through in this kind of new world?
Oh, absolutely. So it is a mindset shift for the management and the leadership team. But you guys both hit on it earlier on, which is in our current ecosystem in technology as a vendor, if you're a cost center, you're going to find yourself struggling to get the funding and the resources that you need. You're always going to be looking for ways to cut costs and trim expenses. Why not tag yourself to the revenue? Why not think about ways? We're talking to a larger amount of the customer base than any other constituency in the company. And I think that's true for most technology companies. Support interacts with a larger base of customers than the sales team or customer success team or professional services teams. And we see a lot of what customers are doing in terms of the use case, in terms of where they're having struggles with the product, where they're having joy with the product, where they're finding success, those kinds of things. I had a lot of experiences in my past where I would go into QBRs, Judy, and I'm sure you had this experience too. And the executives would say, tell me what customers are saying, right? And so what we would do, well, we would look at some of our big customers, we'd go through some tickets, we'd talk to some of our managers or our engineers, and we'd get a sense of what was going on, but it was really just a sense. And I can't tell you the number of times I'd sit in the QBR and somebody from the sales team usually, or the renewals team would say, well, yeah, but that's not what I'm hearing. And then they would have some example of some other customer who was having a different experience. Man, I'll tell you, what we have now is we can look at all of the data. We can look at everything. Judy, to your point, we can see everything that's happening with these interactions, and we can do all sorts of analysis around this data. And having managers start to understand that there are commercial implications here, and at the end of the day, our job is to help our companies be successful, to identify opportunities, to mitigate risks, not just technical, but commercial as well. It's starting to change the way we think, and it's starting to change the way that we think about the customers and the way that we interact with them. So I think that this is just a fantastic opportunity. We have business data. The business data has existed for decades, but now we have a way to farm it. Now we have a way to put some intelligence on top of it and do some things with it that help us start to switch from being a cost center to being a revenue center.
Absolutely. And Jerry, you're a leader that believes in this, so I'm going to put it out there. The other piece about this that's so important is the employee experience, right? Yes. And so for instance, if I was a Delinea customer and you were monitoring my employees' interactions with you through these support cases, and you could come to me during, again, let's say the QBR or you know what it's called, and you could say, hey, Judy, you know, you've got this employee over here doing amazing things, right? Or the opposite, struggling a little bit. And you gave me the opportunity as the leader to step in and help my employee, right? Mm-hmm. That's something, the goodness is there where we're not focusing on that enough. I think we have employee wellness programs, we want lower stress and support and such, but you can take these signals, and while you're looking for the upsell and cross-sell, making life better, you're also making life better for your agents in such a meaningful way. And what a great call out, because most people in support, they love the call outs. If they can suddenly be attached to a high dollar renewal or a high dollar expansion, and they receive recognition for that in a meaningful way, you have a whole new way of rewarding your employees.
Absolutely. No, and that is huge, right? Because there's always kind of been this friction, you know, when you do the quarterly company meetings or all hands meetings, right? And they'll talk about big wins from a sales perspective, right? As they should, rightfully so, right? Those are hard. Some of those big deals are hard to execute on. But you know, you always hear in support, well, what about us? You know, we're the ones that sort of keep the lights on, keep the floors clean, keep the walls painted, that kind of thing. What about us? You're absolutely right. We can absolutely connect this. I will say, I know that's not the topic of this webinar, but just our experience on the escalation side of SupportLogic has also been dramatic, right? We're no longer chasing every single fire that comes in. We're able to get ahead of them. And that too is helping the employee experience, because now they can be a little bit better at managing their time, being thoughtful about how they're approaching their caseload for the day or for the week. It's definitely helping us. So we're definitely improving the employee experience without really asking them to do different things or to learn how to detect, you know, signals of risk, signals of opportunity, those kinds of things.
Right, for sure. So I'm just going to ask you one last question, Jerry. I know, John, we have some questions coming in from the audience as well. Jerry, you know, when you kind of looked at this across your organization, and I think some people listening might feel like, okay, I get it. You can automate looking at these signals, you can put them up for me and such, but it still probably feels like you're about to boil the ocean, because that's a lot.
Yeah.
Do you see a certain type of customer? Do you see a certain industry? You know, how are you doing this in, you know, that, you know, let's eat the elephant in small bites type of thing versus opening it all up and just sending signals on every single case that's there?
Yeah. So I will say, look, our experience is we've not had to boil the ocean, right? We are getting signals, but we are not overwhelmed with them. But it is that there's quality. And to your point earlier, this is a qualified lead. There's something here. I think though the type of customer that we're seeing is it's that silent majority, right? This huge amount of customers that are talking to us and only us as our company, right? They're not talking to sales because there's nothing, they don't think there's anything immediate on the table. Sales isn't talking to them about the latest feature or some new product that we've got, because their renewal is months away, or they've got other customers that they're dealing with. They're not a professional services engagement. They don't have a CSM or a TAM. So support is their view of our company. They're the ones that they talk to. And let's pay attention to them. Let's, they're telling us what they want to do, and we need to be able to kind of listen to that and react to that. So it's that big group in the middle. Your top enterprise customers, there's always somebody talking to them. Your customers who are close to renewal, there's always somebody talking to them. What about that other 80, 85% of your customer base that nobody's really talking to?
Right. Very good. I appreciate that answer a lot, Jerry. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
John, before I turn it back to you, just a slight, mention here. If anybody wants to see this, we do live demos of SupportLogic every single Friday. Our amazing Ryan Radcliffe does these, and you can join those. You can also go out and go to SX Live, and you can see demos there that are recorded, as well as seeing, other customer presentations similar to Jerry's story. So would love to leave everyone here with that. And John, I'll give it back to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you both. It was a great conversation and really interesting to see what Delinea is doing with this. I know we've got a lot of questions coming in from the audience. So Aaron, could I turn it over to you to take us through some of those?
Yeah, sure. So thank you all for presenting a really great discussion today. Just a reminder to the audience, we are opening it up for our Q&A. So if you'd like to submit a question now, please enter it in the Ask a Question box in the top left corner of the webinar player, and we'll try to get through as many questions as time allows. So I'll start with this first question from Chris. How can organizations create alignment between support, sales, and customer success teams to capitalize on the opportunities that you reviewed?
Jerry, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on it a little while ago, Judy, around the metrics, right? And just being able to talk about the things that sales might care about, or the customer success or the renewals team might care about, is bring them the data that is useful to them. Hey, we've got a qualified lead. This is what the customer was asking, and go from there. Talking about CSAT or other things like that are less important. So just come to them showing that we're trying to build the business just the same as they are, I think is a critical step.
Absolutely. And again, I think aligning goals has to be something that's going on. We all said we're in the budget season right now. Let's get in the season of aligning our goals with each other as well. I would say a lot of organizations, they don't even know what each other's goals really are. How about we all get in a room, take the badges off for a minute, and talk about what our goals can be together.
All right, I think we have time for one more question, if that's okay. So this question comes from Pilar. What's the one key takeaway you want companies to leave with today about identifying opportunities in support data?
Let's use Nike. Just do it. It's not hard. It sounds overwhelming, I think, and people have tried to build programs on this for years. John, when you and I used to go around and travel and meet with companies and do assessments and audits, this was something that was talked about, and they wanted to do it, and it felt heavy, and it was always pushed down the list. Just do it. I mean, it's all right there. And of course, a shameless plug for SupportLogic. We can make it easy for you to do this. You can do it in seconds. And I'll promise you'll have the same experience I did when I was a customer. Once you see your data in the system, you can't unsee it. And when you see it and see what's sitting there, that's just ripe for the picking, just do it. Those are my 2 cents. Jerry, what would you say?
I would say absolutely. And look, we knew going in that we were not going to be perfect right out of the gate, right? But if we can start capturing 10% of the opportunity and then work towards 20 and then 30, like that is because there was 0% being captured before. So just start. just start figuring it out. Figure out what processes work for you. Figure out what signals make sense in your business, and how it, what is the customer telling you, and what does that mean? What are you going to do with it? I think just get started and bringing some small amount of revenue to your CRO will start to light up their eyes, and they're like, wait a second, there's an opportunity here. Yes, and then it starts to get some momentum.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today for questions. So thank you, John, Judy, and Jerry, for an outstanding presentation. We've come to the conclusion of today's webinar, and I now have just a quick couple of reminders before we sign off for today. So there will be an exit survey, and we'd really appreciate it if you could please just take a few minutes to provide your feedback on the content and your experience by filling out that brief survey. Also, a link to the recorded version of today's webinar will be sent out within the next 24 hours, so look for that in your inbox. I'd now like to take this time to thank all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us for today's webinar, Turn Support Signals into a Force for Customer Renewal and Expansion, brought to you by TSIA and sponsored by SupportLogic. We look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.